time. My name is Alicia Price, and I'll be your host today. Thank you all for joining us. For those who are returning, thank you so much. It's great to see you again. And for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, welcome, welcome. We'll be doing Eros Talks each day of the week and with different guests, different hosts. Today, our guest is Maya Gilbert, who is a longtime OM practitioner, 16-year practitioner of orgasmic meditation, who is also the creative director of One Taste and the Eros platform. She has a long and extensive career as a pillar in the community and also in the drive and creative force to be reckoned with. Is all of the many of the wonderful things that you see on Instagram, on the platform, are all from the creative genius of Maya Gilbert. She'll be talking today about her own story and also about women's power. Just a hot topic, lots to talk about here. So without further ado, take it away, Maya.
Hello, everybody. Great to see you, everyone who is on the Eros platform and also on all of our socials. So yeah, at any point, if you guys have questions or points of discussion, feel free to put it in the chat on whatever platform you're on, and we can get into it today. So if you don't know me, my name is Maya, and I wanted to start by talking about my OM story, which is the way that I found the practice of orgasmic meditation. And then we go from there and we can kind of see where the talk evolves for today. So I have been practicing orgasmic meditation for 16 years. I found it when I was 20. And so I grew up here I'm in Harlem at our center right now, and I started practicing. I grew up kind of like I had artist parents, and then I had a very, very open experience growing up, like very socially accepted, kind of like explore anything I wanted to. And I was the person in my friends group who was always specifically interested in talking about sexuality and seeing like what was new in that realm. And when I got to a certain age around college, there was something that felt pretty distinctly lacking in my understanding of what was there. And I had this very innate feeling that there was something more to explore. But then when I would look for it, and I was really pretty active in looking for it, I would find something that was either like on the one hand, very you know, meet a whole bunch of people at a bar and everyone's getting drunk, or at a party and everyone's getting drunk, and or even like, I went to college in San Francisco, so there were things like, sex parties and things like that. So that was like one side of the way that people were exploring. And then the other side was like academic lectures on like the state of sexuality and gender norms and all of these things. Both were fun and interesting in their own way, but neither were exactly what I was looking for when I was exploring that kind of unknowable question that was drawing me forward with what am I so interested about sexuality? What is it that is so alluring? And neither of those things quite touched that. So though I often felt like there was like if only I could figure out the question to Google, then I'll have the answer of at least the direction that I'm looking for. But I couldn't even form the question of like, what am I looking for in this realm? So I did a bunch of things, and through kind of a funny roundabout way, a friend found out about OM and told me about it. And I kind of was like, I have no idea what that is. I haven't heard of anything like it, but I have to go try that immediately. And I was really young. I was 20, but I was just so curious from everything that I heard about it. Orgasmic meditation, for if you don't know what it is, It's a 15-minute partnered practice where a person strokes a woman's clitoris for 15 minutes, always 15 minutes, in a very, very simple, gentle way. And they both put their attention on the sensation in their body, and it's a mindfulness practice. And yeah, at the time, 16 years ago, even meditation itself was not a, common thing that people did. There weren't as many like big meditation studios on like different corners of this of, you could find them, but not really. But I heard about it and I was like, this is so interesting and I have to go experience it. So there was at the time a 1-day class that I was able to go to, and Alicia was my teacher. And and it was this clean, well-lit room of people being really intimate. I mean, I think that anytime we can have a room where people get together and talk about these things that I think, we keep under the covers of our soul, like these questions that you feel like, does anyone else experience that? Has anyone else been in that position? Am I alone? For me at the time, I remember I was this like young, hot 20-year-old, and like I went to the gynecologist at some point in college to look at my vagina and be like, is this normal anatomy? Because I don't think I'm having an experience like what I think I should be having. And the gynecologist was really, on the one hand, really great, where she was like, honey, you got a textbook vagina. And at the same time, it didn't, so I was like, okay, nothing's wrong, but there's something that an experience that I want to touch that I'm not experiencing. And I don't know how to ask that. And she definitely didn't know how to tell me, anything, anything beyond my anatomy. And so just to be in a room of people having these conversations, asking these questions, you know, um, that alone was incredibly intimate and very uh, illuminating uh, across the board for everyone who is there of all different walks of life. And then I saw a demonstration of OM. And when I saw the demonstration, that really took me to a whole new place, because it was like having those questions answered that I could not even form into words. So to be able to experience viscerally, there's a demonstration of happening in front of me, and I can feel all of the things that they'd been talking about all day, that it's not based on climax, and that there's an entire other realm of experience of arousal and orgasm and connection that has nothing to do with climax. It could or could not happen. It's just not about that. It's not, and I think everyone basically in the culture is all driving to climax always. And that's a huge part of everyone's neuroses of, is it happening or not happening? And at the same time is the ultimate goal and all of these things. And to have that whole conversation just swept out, and then this entirely different experience of a feminine model of orgasm and connection that had peaks and valleys, and where both people were so clearly tuned in to the same thing, where the stroker and the strokee were really listening to the same music of the experience that was happening, and they weren't talking, and yet they were so connected viscerally together. That ended, and I was so literally blown away that I sat on the, it was lunchtime after that, and I just sat on the couch in the room that we were in, and I like could not leave for the next hour, and I was just stunned. Uh, and and it was this big kind of deciding moment where I think that a lot of times when things like that happen, you can say, either you can kind of pass it off like, oh, that didn't happen, or I don't understand, or that wasn't as big of a deal as that really was just now. Or you can kind of take that moment and be like, I want to explore that, even if it's going to be uncomfortable and kind of strange and different from anything that I've seen before or done before. And there was something inside of me, and I feel grateful. I don't know what it was that really drove me, but had such a strong feeling of I don't want to go another day of my life not understanding this part of myself and not understanding like what that was that I just experienced. And at the time I was very intellectual and not as connected to my body. And so even the idea that like you could learn to feel more I didn't comprehend that. I was like, there's a certain level I'm feeling now. How do you feel more than what you feel? Um, and but there was, at this class that I went to and at the events that I'd gone to, I'd met by that point, 10 women who owned, and they were younger and they were older and they were introverted and they were extroverted. And some were mouthy New Yorkers and others were like from the South or, whatever. And all of them across the board were so clearly lit from the inside and turned on and just that kind of radiant quality that a woman is when she is turned on, that I was like, clearly something is working because all of them, if you could say maybe if some of them weren't and others were, but all of them and whoever they were all had this very same light, about them. And I was like, well, whatever that is, I would like that in and to connect to that into myself. So I started practicing right there at that first class, and I didn't feel anything at all in my first um, because I was so in my head and so just kind of thinking about it. And again, it was one of these moments where I, you're like, maybe it works for everyone else and not for me. And that's a very common feeling that a lot of women have. Um, and, but I had great teachers like Alicia, and she was like, just keep practicing, it will come, and I did, and I just started practicing literally every day from that day. I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep trying it. So I started practicing every day, and really slowly sensation started to open inside of me, and it was a beautiful experience. It was very nonlinear, and that's kind of one of the things I think is very cool and interesting with everyone when they start OMing is everyone's experience is different of how it opens and what it opens and how fast or the different things that happen. And so for me, there was a while where I still wasn't feeling very much in the Om itself. But then I would get up and I would walk in the street and like it was like I'd like walk into Technicolor like life outside. And so it would open something in me that then had my perceptions really, really magnified. And or I'd like walk into work afterwards and everyone would be like, did you get a haircut? And it'd be like, nope, that's not what's happening here. And and so I was having this experience of feeling like even though in the actual practice I wasn't being able to perceive what was happening outside of the practice, I was beginning like it was beginning to animate my life and animate my perceptions. And then finally, as I kept going in the practice, more and more sensation began opening and more feeling began opening. And then, jump to 6 months or a year into my practice, I was fully feeling, you know, really tuned in to every stroke. And then really another big milestone for me was speaking, because I could, when I started OMing, literally I had to like cover my eyes and really concentrate really hard because like light and everything was so distracting from like really trying to focus on feeling. And I remember just by 6 months or a year, I was really able to let go and feel and communicate. And I thought that was really huge to be able to say, if I needed a little to the left, a little lighter, a little, so much when I started, I was like, I can't even feel anything. How am I supposed to adjust something I can't even feel? Um, and so beginning to open up that whole part of the practice. And so that was my first year of practice, and now it's been 16 years. And it's been this really it's so cool to do a practice that long, period. And specifically one that's on, I think, one of the like most pivotal topics of our age right now, which is our connection, our body, women's power, and arousal. And to have done it this long and see the culture go through these different shifts of how we relate to all of those topics, you know? And so I have this very personal journey of what I've gone through and how I've been able to open into deeper and deeper parts of my own ability to feel, into deeper and deeper aspects of letting go and reception and cultivation of my own power and my own arousal. Simultaneous to that is seeing, you know, the timeline of our culture that has gone from, you know, first, like I said, very interesting to see like the rise of practices in general in the culture and here in America, where you see meditation, you see yoga, um, having like really main staged into the culture that like literally when I started, no one was talking about meditation. And now meditation is in prisons, it's in universities, it's, you know, everywhere on the kind of main stage of what we do in the culture. And then psychedelics and seeing the entire rise of psychedelics and the very interesting like dynamics of that, of the everything from the cultural and the legal and the health and healing, all of it experience. And so seeing that, and then seeing this kind of gate that we're at now with, we went through, you know, the big kind of wave of Me Too that now has landed us on the shore of still no one being much better for it, and most people still being continuously confused on what do we actually do about women's power, sexuality, and our connection with each other. And I, you know, having for I think most people here know that we've just gone through a lot of uh like the frontier of what I would say is like the legal kind of situation of now sexuality and women's power. And where it's left me is just like we still, like, still as a culture, don't understand so much about how all of this works, how women's sexuality works, how power works, how arousal works. And, you know, it can get maddening at times. It can get to these places where you're like, you know, how, what will it take to break through some of these conversations into the culture because they're so fundamental and it keeps feeling like we just keep rolling it back, you know, and you look at these things like that women get really angry about, like everything from transgression to, you know, rollback of Roe v. Wade or all of these different kinds of things. But the answers that women keep presenting and pushing forward are the things that are actually not going to drive us to the place we want to go. And continuously, as I see it in what would actually bring us to those places, it is all of us deeply, in a much more deep way, understanding how arousal works, understand and having a personal and direct relationship to it in our lives. And so that's kind of all I think about day in and day out these days is how do we get all of that out? You know, as Alicia said, I'm the creative director here. And so every day on the Eros platform, we have a new magazine. If you guys haven't seen it, it is beautiful. That we've started. So between the Eros magazine, the Eros platform talks, our Instagrams, these conversations that we have with each other, events that we run at our center here in Harlem and various places whenever we run events, this is the kind of driving thing that's on my mind is how do we change this conversation that moves the needle from where we are as a culture and how we relate to women and women's power to what actually will turn the tide. To speak a little bit about arousal. And if anyone has questions at this point on any of our socials or in on the Zoom, you can send it in. But uh, the
There's one question, Maya, if you'd like to take it now.
oh yeah, sure.
From Instagram, the Instagram user asks, do you see yourself OMing for the rest of your life? And then they continue to say 16 years to 100 years.
I do in fact see myself OMing for the rest of my life. I mean, the thing, so what I was going to say just now is just to kind of give a little talk on arousal. The thing that happens when you OM is you connect directly into your own body's arousal and into connection with another human being. And I think that this is the kind of, we talk often like the story of there are sailors and they would all get scurvy. And it was this like mass hysteria of like, what's the problem here? And then it was like the answer was vitamin C. And you just needed some vitamin C and like all the scurvy was gone. And there's this way that there's a whole swath of problems that exist in our world today, especially as women, that seem so pressing and seem so uh like disastrous for our world and our psyche and our relationships and all these things. But then the answer over and over is still very, to me, much the same answer which is it just is about women having access and connecting directly to their own arousal. And there's a million and one ways that we, as a culture, talk women out of it, from like, demonizing it to like more insidious ways of controlling it. Like, you can only access it with one person. And I'm not saying that it's not a particular commentary on monogamy or not, but it is a way that women, you know, deprivate for long periods of time. If they can't have any access to their own arousal unless it's with one person, then there's long times where it's like they're not having their vitamin C that would bring them the power and clarity in order to be healthy. And um and so all of these ways as a culture that we denigrate, turn it down, and even have like the best idea of what arousal is just like a lot of feel good pleasure, which is great. Like that's better than not, but there's so much more, and we ask so little of it. And the places that it could truly bring, genuinely, in my opinion, world peace. Like there's places where women being connected to that power source within themselves brings a kind of clarity to any place they enter, brings a kind of radiance to any place they enter, which that alone, everyone knows that those kinds of experiences when you're in the presence of a woman who is just so lit and generous, and everything around you suddenly feels that kind of clarity and that kind of creativity and inspiration. And imagine if the world had access to that every day in every room that you walk into. And so, um, so for myself, yes, indeed, I will be OMing every day for the rest of my life because I think it's that kind of level of importance of a kind of practice that one can do. And it's revolutionary in so many ways that in some ways feel like silly that it's revolutionary, and in other ways, but we're still not there yet. So it is, and so because like something like you can practice it if you're like in the mood or not in the mood, which is just another thing that like so many people don't engage in their erotic energy because we've been told that you have to be in the mood. All these conditions have to be there first before you can access it. No, it's the same, like you don't have to be flexible to do yoga. You do yoga to be flexible. You practice in your erotic energy in order to have that consistent sense of arousal through everything you do. And so to be able to have that on a daily basis is something that I think is incredibly important for myself and all humankind. Next question.
Does anyone else have a question for Maya? If you're on social media, if you're here on the Zoom. Rachel, you have a question. Unmute.
Yes, I got it. I got it. Hi. Hi, Maya. Okay, such a beautiful story. I could feel every moment of it, and I had such a lovely remembering of my first demo as well. And I had a similar experience to you. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. I just had to sit there and experience and remember. Experience and remember. So that was gorgeous. But I had this, I kept thinking, as you were talking, what is next? I'd love to hear what you think about. I mean, we're clearly ushering this cultural change in with everything we're doing, especially what you're doing on the platform and with the creative aspect of the platform and the magazine and everything. But I know you have a lot of future sight, and I was wondering what you see in your crosshairs as you look out.
Yeah, there's a few things that I see. One is I really do believe that turned on people create more turned on people. So as many people that can be out in the world um, in practicing Om and being that, I think is just very on the ground level. One of it is that people can feel the difference and that will just naturally spread. There's also like a kind of political and cultural aspect of it. Last night, there is this incredible podcast. I can't wait till it's live that everyone can see it. It was with Elizabeth Nolan Brown from Reason and a few other women who are on this podcast talking about our case. And they were talking about our case, but they were talking about what kind of these same questions, but these women are all kind of on the libertarian side of things. And I think women having more of these questions where they're truly, truly breaking these things down of these topics that are so nuanced and important, topics like women and consent and the infantilization of women um and how things that seem to be protecting women, especially in a legal context, they seem really good until you realize that what a legal system is doing is actually taking over into domains where women should be the ones who are actually manning those stations, that women should be the ones who are making those decisions, having those conversations, having experiences, even if they're difficult experiences, and learning from them, and that being a source of power and a source of cultural that as a cultural movement for women that we strive to have experiences and strive to have experiences even when they're difficult, and that we learn ways of sharing about that and sharing our learning so that we get through them. We don't offload those territories of challenge to just like larger structures that take care of it for us, and then cut us off from our own wisdom. And so I see these kinds of cultural, I think that we need to have like a loudspeaker in terms of understanding these conceptual things. I know that for me, it was so much with Nicole Daedone, who founded Orgasmic Meditation. She has done a ton of writing, and she wrote a bunch of these foundational books called the Eros Sutras, which are all available online. You can read. And I know that for myself, it was through practice, it was through reading, it was through all these things. It took a long time for myself to kind of understand the whole, what I was calling, the whole math of the equation of women's power, and to continuously explore that. And I think that as a culture, we need to lay out the math more. So women really see, oh, this is the equation of what gets us to the powerful place we all want to get to. This is the equation that we might feel good and might get us like maybe like a quick hit, but it doesn't lead us to the place we want to get to. And really, I think when women truly understand that, it'll help at least change their minds. And I think then as a culture, we need to change our actual experience. And so I think more women, practicing OM and being turned on viscerally, that changes, I have tons of friends. I have friends on this call. I have so many people who have practiced OM, where you practice OM and literally in 1 month, it can do more healing than 10 years of talk therapy has done. And that is a powerful experience. And that is a humbling experience, I think, for a lot of women to be like, oh, I really was trying everything but that gate, and you get to it when you get to it. But then really, I think all of us admitting that that is the place that we are at, and it is time for us to touch into that and, you know, do all of the talking so we understand it, but then actually do the practice so that we actually can practice how to do this turn.
Nice, Maya. Thank you. We do have another question from Instagram. If you can speak to this, do we have a working matriarchal model to see that's effective today?
I don't think that we have many matriarchal models today, but I think that this is a great start of a concept. I mean, I'm Italian, and so I'm kind of naturally a matriarch. And I think that I think that within that conversation, I think that the thing I care less about exactly is like, is it a matriarch or is it a patriarch? Personally, I think that the thing is just like, where is there imbalance and what needs to be rebalanced within our culture for more health. And so rather than it being a question of like who's in charge, like matriarch and patriarch to me kind of has a foundation of like who's in charge. And it's like almost like that's like a little like less the point for me. And it's more how do we have everything be in its right function and right health and doing its right role within society. And when you have an entire group, in this case, women who are deprived of a very vital nutrient, they're not going to be in their, best health. And then I think men tremendously are at a disadvantage when women are in that kind of scarcity. And so, yeah, so when women have a full access to their erotic power, everyone wins and everyone benefits.
Very, very true. We do have another question, and if anyone on the Zoom has a question, please raise your hand. Happy to answer any questions on here. We do have another social media question. How has your spiritual walk changed as your OMing practice expanded?
That's a great question. When I first, I had no spiritual or religious background growing up. My parents are both artists, and so creativity in and of itself, I think, puts you in touch with a kind of similar concept of like a listening to a greater force for inspiration in the muse. But I had no religion and no spirituality or a concept of that other than that. Then on top of that, I became super intellectual through high school and college, and in a kind of like rationalist way. And then I had this really, really big experience when I was in college where a friend, my best friend at the time, gave me a bunch of pot cookies without telling me. And I had a really big experience, as anyone who's been in that kind of situation. And it really like had me unable to kind of come down back like into my body for like a month after that. And I think in many ways that experience was part of what unconsciously led me to OM. Because when I was so far out there, I was like, whatever this is, I have no idea how to come back, and I really need to come back to earth and be in my body. And that was maybe the year before I found OM. And I think that through the practice of OM, I have learned how to have an incredibly very deep relationship with spirituality, because inherent in OM is this ability to access the mystical state. Now it was one of these things where we did years and years and years of practice, thousands of people talking about this experience of accessing the mystical state and accessing these experiences of oneness, of time dissolution, boundary dissolution, where you feel like, you can't tell the difference between your body or your partner's body and the space that you're in, and all of these things that are very psychedelic. But we hadn't done any science yet. And over the last 10 years or so, we have done a ton of science research. There have been a lot of really amazing different universities and scientists who have taken on studying all of these different aspects of OM. And it was found indeed that the experience of OM for a lot of people is equivalent to the second to highest dose of psilocybin that they've studied in other mystical states at Johns Hopkins. And so I think inherently in that, as you access the mystical state over and over and over when you practice OM, for me, the cool thing is then to be able to describe what that's like, to describe, because it's not in any context of a religion or anything like that. It's a feminine spirituality, and it's directly connected to the body, which is, I think different from a lot of religion. And then it's more similar to things like maybe yoga or meditation. But this is also then in connection with other people. So it's a very connected and embodied spirituality that has made me much more sensitive and has made me able to connect with I think a lot of the things that people try to make themselves connect with, connect with a sense of oneness with the world, a sense of how to contribute and help, a sense of a desire for your own purpose, and creation, all of these things that I think people want, but kind of try to manufacture in themselves. Whereas when I practice, it taps me into the place that those things happen naturally. And so that's been an incredible benefit of the practice for me, is opening kind of that whole world of sensory perception and creative perception.
Beautiful, Maya. Anyone else have a question for Maya on this wonderful topic of her experiences and women's power? Any other questions? If there are no more questions, we can transition to reflections. Going once, going twice. All right. Who has a reflection? Anyone on the Zoom have a reflection for Maya today? Matthias.
Hey, Maya.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to see and hear you. I have a poem for you. if you would like.
Fantastic. Yes, I would.
Yeah. Okay. Intimate illumination, visceral knowing, taking the exit ramp off the freeway of climax, tuned to the experience of the rhythm of the spot. Not another day to not feel more, undeniably lit from the inside. I didn't feel a thing every day until the opening of Technicolor Radiance, then feeling every stroke and spoke my truth. After 16 years, dedicated practice, the culture catching up on their cushion. Me too, leading to so what now? Down a hole with no arousal. But the truest answer is claiming your power and taking your vitamin A one stroke at a time.
Bravo. I love that.
Nice one. Any other reflections on the Zoom? We've got one. Emmet, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciated just how all the different aspects feel like they're synthesizing into what's really the message coming out into the world. So I was really grateful to feel that and feeling it penetrating outward.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other reflections from the Zoom before I head to Instagram? Yeah, Patricia, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Maya. And wow, I so appreciate your thread of your life journey, because I think we can all look back on, and it brought me back to my own, and even to some, I don't know, side paths or side threads or something, and how encouraging it is for me to know that it was all learning, and here we are now. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
Russell, go ahead.
Hi, Maya. There's a quality that you've been bringing forth that, like, I'm sort of through my whole life is this like learning that I'm not the only one here, and sometimes I'm terrified by people who seem to know what they want. Makes me just like causes more attention. There's a safety that you bring with the power that you generate. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone else on here? I got one on social media. Let's see. So one of our Instagram users said, maybe we need to build matriarchal communities and cities and show the world what living a happy life really means.
Beautiful.
And then one more from online. My reflection is that I am loving this, and I am loving the depth and the presence of you, Maya. You are a transmission.
Thank you. Really fun talking with everyone today. Let's
Yeah, let's Thank you so much, Maya. It's a lovely talk. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today, whether you're here in the Zoom, if it's your first time, or if you're here often on any of our socials. Thanks so much. We're here every day of the week at this time slot. And like Maya said, let's Om. We do have our next introduction to Om class coming up. It is August 23rd. It's a Saturday. It's an online class. You can join from wherever you are. The links are being posted now. Click on through and take a peek. If you're interested in the practice, sign up and join us at the next Intro to Om. Other than that, we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.